I'm Tony Curtis and I'm in Llantwit Major, and I'm a writer and delighted to be a contributor to the forthcoming festival in Llantwit Major this June. One of the things I'm going to present is my novel, Darkness in the City of Light. It's a novel set in wartime Paris, and it's a sort of novel that took me to places that I couldn't anticipate, and hopefully will take you, the reader and the listener, to places that you'd be surprised by. But going back to June 1940, Paris had received a very special visitor. The cover shows Adolf Hitler, and on one side is Albert Speer, his architect, and on the other side is Arno Breker, his favourite sculptor. And this is in the voice of Breker. This is a novel in voices. My central character, who's a serial killer, Dr. Marcel Petiot, is one of the voices. Other voices include Hitler, Coco Chanel, Pablo Picasso, Ernest Hemingway. Fred Astaire even dances across one of the pages. This is June 1940, Arno Breker's Paris. We were driven in the black Mercedes sedan, quite discreetly, with just two other cars, down an empty Champs-Élysées on a glorious day, 6 a.m. The sun was shining on our celebrations. I sat next to Albert Speer, just behind the Führer, who was quite quiet, as if soaking in the significance of the moment. He must have dreamt of this victory through the months of trench, mud, and the carnage of the Flanders campaign. Paris was a distant goal that proved then to be beyond us. The scything plan to circle down through Belgium had not been completed. That time. Our fighting men had been let down by politics and the Jews. But the French have proved stupid again and clearly have learned nothing. There were no trenches this time. Our armour and columns swept through Belgium. It is all ours. This is a duel, indeed, but you two men will build Berlin into a colossus which will cast this place into the shadows. And now we will walk before the Eiffel Tower and show the world what we have done. The Führer is more determined than triumphant. I decline to march in triumph at the head of my troops here, he said. We shall secure an entente Franco-Allemande when these people come to their senses and accept our victory and the new world order. Hitler instructed his photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann, take me in front of this view of the Eiffel Tower, then the next one at Buckingham Palace, and then the skyscrapers. Well, we know as readers and as people who've lived into the next century that didn't happen. Hitler spent 6 hours in Paris. It was almost as if he was overwhelmed by it. When you've conquered somewhere, that's fine, but what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with Vietnam? What are you going to do with bits of Ukraine if you conquer them? What are you going to do with them? You have to control them. You have to honour what's there. And many of the Germans who came to Paris were Francophiles and greatly respected. They knew Paris. They greatly respected what was there. Against that backdrop, my dastardly villain, Dr. Marcel Petiot, takes advantage of the chaos and the confusion to steal from people, to murder people, and to get away with it. Or does he? Well, come along, hear me read more from this novel. Hopefully buy it and find out for yourselves. It's an amazing story that goes beyond the war, far beyond the war. His foxy widow and teenage son survived into this century. Darkness in the City of Light is my first novel, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm Tony Curtis. I'm a writer and the editor of this wonderful anthology, Where the Birds Sing Our Names. It's an anthology of poems and lyrics to raise money for T Haven, the children's hospice in South Glamorgan. A more worthy cause there cannot be. So do come to the Llantwit Festival and hear me and some of my contributors reading from this anthology. It's got some very famous people in it, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, and perhaps the most famous writer in Wales, Max Boyce. These people immediately responded and sent me work for an anthology that has some of the best poets writing in the British Isles, 4 national poets as well as those big names. I wanted to raise money for Tea Haven because I'd been to the funeral of a child of 8, and when I went to research this at Tea Haven, I found there's a garden there, and each child that passes on who's been through Tea Haven is remembranced by a bird song that sings the syllables of their first names. And that's where this anthology comes from. This anthology, this is not a book about sadness. This is a book about parents, children, and birds. When the children pass on, their names are put into Morse code, dot and dash. And the parents choose a songbird: robin, blackbird, wren, and thrush. These name notes are played as you pass each tree in the woods around Tea Haven, the house haven. Bird sings to bird across the land, a chain of notes until the trees end and the oceans begin. Then they fly beyond. So imitative birds pass on these name notes of song against the murmurings of the sea. Some kind of immortality. Tea Haven, which most of us will not visit, is there in Surrey, the most remarkable place, doing the most remarkable work. And they need funding. And when you come to the festival and you buy this book, the £10, all of it goes to Tea Haven. Nobody gets, none of the contributors take anything. The publisher isn't taking anything. It's completely covered. So that's another reason to come to this wonderful festival in Llantwit Major, where the birds sing our names.